Joining me today, as always, is Geronimo and Ed Garrett. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing great.
Good. How's it going?
Very good, very good. We had another exciting week, as always. There's never a dull moment in the comic book world, and especially this week, I think we may have stirred up a little bit of drama this week. Hopefully, not too much drama with Michael Straczynski, but we had a pretty interesting article up on the website regarding Apocalypse Al that Ed wrote regarding one of the scenes that seemed to be a little bit on the more disturbing side or erotic side. Ed, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. With Apocalypse Al, right here, is a relatively new series. It's on its second issue. J. Michael Straczynski, who wrote Superman Earth 1, has it. And the main character is Allison Carter. So the Al is actually Allison. She's a private detective. Her beat is stopping the end of the world. So it's sort of a noir private detective story meets Men in Black meets Beetlejuice. And the first issue was great. A lot of the second issue is good. And overall, I like a lot of what Straczynski writes. But there was a character they introduced named Ronnie, who's a techno wizard who somehow combines connection to the internet with connections to the spiritual world. And he's a creep. And in the book, it's pretty obvious that he is somehow removing her underwear and somehow placing it back without her knowledge or consent. And the first time you hear the mention of it, she says, if my thong comes back on backwards, I'm going to have to kick somebody's ass. And then later in the story, while she's incapacitated in some sort of virtual world, she comes out of it to find that her bra is missing. And, it's played up for the yucks. She does beat him up. But that comes across as just some degree of sexual assault. And so I put an article up sort of saying, not trying to make a poster boy out of J. Michael Straczynski, but just saying this happens a lot in comics where they'll throw in something that's really creepy that's not necessarily important to the storyline. They could have told the story without it. But it's thrown in there for the lulz, and it's creepy, and you hope that kind of stuff would stop. And then Straczynski came onto our site to leave a comment and really try to explain himself that this was not him physically removing her clothes, but that he had some means of mystically dematerializing and rematerializing her clothes just to annoy her so that at least there wasn't physical molestation going on. Glad he came on, glad he commented, still creepy.
Let me read exactly what Michael wrote on the site.
Please do.
Just to give him a fair say here. So, quote from Michael: just FYI, when I wrote that scene, the intro to Ronnie was that, as stated in the caption, he, quote, has a fetish for women's clothing and what he thinks is a puckish sense of humor, end quote. My thought and intent was that he mystically messes with her clothes, but never, ever touched her. With that written preamble, it never occurred to me that it could be read otherwise. As the book went to press, one person mentioned it could be seen that way. So I immediately posted a note to my Facebook page making it clear that this was never the intent for that scene, that we had already put through a change in trade making clear that he was mystically dematerializing and rematerializing her clothes across the room or backwards to annoy her, but to strictly in a hands-off manner. Never laid a finger on her. There was nothing misogynist intent anywhere in there, and it was never indicated that he, quote, molested her. That's just not the case. So I kind of see where he's coming from a little bit, and I think, to be honest, from my point of view as to what happened, he wrote it, he put it in there, kind of wanted to really play on the creepy feeling of this character, that yes, this is a weird person, but yet there's weird people in the world that we live in. Not to say that it's right that they're there, but they are. And he never wanted there to be a sort of molestation involved in his book. And I think he knew he was probably in the gray area when he wrote this, but I don't necessarily think that he knew until somebody probably went over it at Image when they were going to press and said, "Hey, this is messed up, and I don't know that this is good." And they're like, "Well, too late. We got to print. We'll print, and then when we reprint, we'll fix it, and we'll change it up." And then he got all this. That's why I think he tried to beat it to the punch by going to his Facebook page, where he put up. You can go to his Facebook page and see what he wrote. We also have it on our website.
Right.
If you look at our article, we have his full post there. That really wasn't his. I don't think he really wanted to rub any feathers. He knew he was kind of pushing the gray area of, and I think that's why she beat the crap out of him in the end. Right. So I see where do we need this in comic books, Ed? No.
Yeah,
Does sex sell, Ed? Yes.
But here's the
look who reads comic books.
Well, but that's the point.
It's not doesn't make it right. I know.
No, but that's exactly the point, though. He's playing to a particular audience, and all too often in comics, we're playing to a male, junior high to middle age audience, and forgetting that half the world is female. And I don't think he really particularly. I'll accept his explanation that he wasn't trying to show physical molestation, and I appreciate that he came on the site. I don't think he's a particularly bad guy, and I don't want to portray him that way. That's the reason I posted that second article that posted his full response to us and his Facebook post in full, because I didn't have a desire to trash him in particular. But I do think it was a little bit tone deaf, even in that explanation, because you think about it, you think about how many junior high school boys would love to have a secret device that dematerializes women's underwear, which ought to be the textbook definition of misogyny. And I don't think that was his intent, but it's still a little creepy, and it was not necessary. Now, if you want to publish something, you're right, sex sells. If you want to publish something, I'm a big First Amendment guy. I love the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund. I think you got a perfect right to it. But I also have a right to stand up and say, you know what, it's a little tone deaf. And I'll give you a different example. Another series you wrote, and by the way, I do like Apocalypse Al as a series overall. I had a problem with Al's scenes. I like the series. I'm going to continue to read it. Another series he has called Sidekick, which follows a guy whose mentor is assassinated apparently, with emphasis on apparently, and the sidekick realizes he's just a joke and his life spirals down out of control. And one of the ways they tried to show that his life had spiraled down was that Straczynski had him using his powers and the threat of arrest to coerce a hooker into giving him free sex. And it wasn't forcible rape. It was still rather rapey. It was still something that it wasn't necessary. It wasn't central to the character. It wasn't necessary for the story itself. And so I don't think he's a bad guy. I think he may be a little tone deaf to some of those issues. I'm glad that he's making the change on the trade paperback. I think that speaks well for him. And for him to be so proactive in explaining himself and not coming across in his explanation like he's trying to put anyone else down, I appreciate that. I do think that that's good. I just think it's a subject that deserves some further consideration.
Yeah, I can see that. To play devil's advocate even further, though, could you also maybe say that, I mean, it takes some guts to tackle some complex issues. I know maybe it hasn't been done in the perfect way, but in another way, isn't it good that we have writers that are willing to address more difficult situations, whether they're right or wrong or disturbing? They're part of the real world, and they do exist. And I know some other writers have done it in different ways. I know Gail Simone's had done some amazing writing in addressing different issues with female characters, which has been great to really get more females into the light of comic books. But I think in a way, maybe this isn't the best subject to be addressing it on, but I think that it's good that we have writers that are willing to write about issues that people don't want to talk about. that are disturbing, but they are part of the world, but we also don't want to encourage, like you said, most of these readers are younger aged men, kids who may not have developed the proper judgment of character.
There are a lot of comics that tackle very complex issues, and I think that that's okay. And there are even comics that I've reviewed where they portray sexuality in a very frank manner that fits in with the character, that fits in with the story. And so I'm not trying to censor any comics at all. I do think that in this case it was the way it was portrayed, the way it was played up for the yucks. It really was not central to either Allison Carter or to the story. It was really played up more for comic effect, and I think that was where I had a problem with it, was that it was, I'll give him credit enough to say that she beat him up for it, which shows that he thinks the behavior is unacceptable, but to play it for comic effect was probably the wrong tone to take. And I do think, if comics are to survive beyond this generation, because every generation we're fighting for a dwindling group, and when your main demographic is 35-year-old white male, you're not really set for the long term in a business model. And so when you're trying to attract more female readers, a greater diversity of every kind, this probably was a little bit tone-deaf way to go about it. That being said, I never wanted to make J. Michael Straczynski the poster boy of bad behavior or to slam him personally. I'm glad that we're able to have the discussion. I just think that there's better ways to portray it than what we saw in that particular issue.
Moving on, I agree. I agree with you wholeheartedly there. But not beat a dead horse. If you want to read more about it, check tmsash.com. It's got some amazing articles and such up there, and we have everything that Michael Straczynski has written about it. And definitely check out the comic for yourself and see what you think, and share what you think in the comments. And we'll be active in the comments on the website to see what everyone thinks.
All comments are welcome.
So moving on to some other really big news that's coming out of South by Southwest. Oddly enough, Marvel being part of what is now everyone's involvement in South by Southwest Festival in Austin, Texas, is they are releasing or adding adaptive audio to their comics, most specifically Captain America 8, 9, and 11 through 14, where it's adding audio to the comics, and it's actually adjusting the audio to the pace that readers read at. So if you stop on a page, the audio will loop. If you continue on, it'll proceed, and it gives you like an orchestral score behind the comic. They even went they went and got some of the top composers in the world to compose music for these Captain America books. And as they see fit, they will continue to add these to their comics. One caveat, these are only available to Marvel Unlimited subscribers. And as part of that caveat, till March 15th, for 99 cents, you can get Marvel Unlimited for 1 month. After that 1 month is up, you will be then paying $10 a month. For those of you not familiar, Marvel Unlimited, an app for iOS and Android. Not sure if Windows is supported, but who uses Windows mobile devices? Anyways, so you pay $9.99 a month, and you have access to all comic books that are 6 months or older. So I know that DC has tried this in the past, not with audio, but they have a Batman app that's more of a animated comic, kind of an in-between their animated series and a comic book, and where there's animated actions going through the comics. Hasn't really picked up pace, and for years Marvel apparently has been working on this to try to do audio to bring a new wavelength into digital comics. Do you guys see this? What are your thoughts on this? Is this something that you're interested in?
Well, me personally, I think it could go over well, one thing this is a personal me thing. When I read a book or a comic book, I kind of have this my own sounds and dialogue going through my head, and I'm kind of particular to my own vision of that. And if they deliver it on a level to where it doesn't, where it actually is as cool as I think it could be, then I would totally be on board.
Yeah, because apparently there's sound effects built in to where, like, you'll hear a knife going through someone, you'll hear, like, beeps and boops of different things going on, and it really has, like, a score to really give you a feel of the book as though, you're in a movie, which is, I mean, something Marvel, I guess, has done well with, converting their comics into these giant blockbuster movies. I think this is just something to where a median that, can drive the Marvel Unlimited service, but also really utilize the fact that a lot of people read digital comics now, because we all have, devices with amazing displays. To be perfectly honest with you, I think reading a book on my iPad Retina looks better than the pages themselves. So, but with that being said, they're not charging you anymore for it. So I kind of like it. I think it's interesting. I'm not the atypical. I'm not a hardcore. I haven't been reading comics my whole life, admittedly. I've jumped on late in the game, so maybe this appeals more to someone like me who, hasn't been reading comics. But Ed, what do you think? You've been reading comics for 50 years without audio. What do you think of this?
Well, actually, I think you've made the real point here. They're trying to get the casual fan. There's hardcore comics fans that are going to buy comics in print. There's some that I actually buy digitally when I'm on the road, and then when I get back to my local comic shop, I buy it again in print. I'm that hardcore fan they don't need to worry about. They need to worry about you and all the other casual fans and how to bring in new folks. And if this brings in new folks, I think that's the point. It's taking advantage, like Comixology has guided view technology that takes a different way of looking at the page and how the page builds. Now we've got this for audio. I like all the experimentation, and I'm sort of like Joe for my personal use. I want to see the execution, but I'm glad to see people trying different ideas.
It's a cool idea. I honestly just don't know how Marvel can do it. I mean, you've been working on this for years, and hiring these composers is not cheap, and to develop a score, I mean, this is big money. So I just don't know to what scale that they can really do this. I mean, sure, Captain America 8, 9, 11 through 14, great. That's like 6 comic books. I mean, are you going to do this for? I mean, how are you? I just don't know how they're going to sustain this. I think it's kind of a cool gimmick. I just don't know how much traction it can get. But if they can build this giant, database of audio assisted comics, then I'm sure.
And I wonder if it's not maybe a stepping stone to maybe full motion comics or some other thing they're trying to build towards. But kind of like Ed said, also I want to see the execution before I'm completely sold on it. But I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I think there's definitely room to grow, because I still don't think. I think comic books are pushing it a lot. Magazines haven't done anything, and they're really missing out because they can do a lot with digital. But I think there's a lot of room to grow and a lot of cool things that they can do, and at least Marvel's experimenting with ideas. So it'll just be interesting as the years go on and as more and more people start adapting the digital comic books to really take off with this. So I can't wait to see what's coming up next. Let's say that, but I don't think I'm on board just yet. With that being said, I know that we were talking last week a little bit about Nightwing.
Yes.
And nothing happened.
Well, it's one of these. It was a great issue. Forever Evil's a great series. Huge amount of things happening here, and this is a spoiler alert. So if you want to turn down your volume for about 30 seconds or so,
I'll wave my hands when you can come back.
Yeah, there we go. Nightwing is in something called the Murder Machine, which is apocalyptic technology, and basically the timer is tied to his heart, and the only way to disarm the bomb is for his heart to stop beating. So Lex Luthor and Batman are fighting over, do you kill Nightwing to save everybody? And Luthor stops his heart. Nightwing technically dies. Batman starts to beat him up, and he says something like, "You idiot, this is not over yet." So they certainly leave the door open for Nightwing to be revived as soon as next issue, which is a little bit of bait and switch. The overall issue is a fantastic issue. Captain Cold gets a chance to really be something special, which I'm glad to see a Flash Rogue do so well. And they're certainly setting up some fun interplay between Batman and Luthor.
Okay, you guys can come back now.
Yeah.
Come back.
Yeah.
No more spoilers.
But that's about it. But overall a great issue. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in the next issue because they certainly have set up something for an awesome finish.
Looking forward to see what happens with Nightwing. I'm sure he'll come back to life next book. But
let's hope so.
So keep buying books. Yay! All right.
Yeah.
So what's going on next week with DC or with Marvel, Joe?
Well, if I might, real quick, this past week they just released a brand new volume for Moon Knight.
Woohoo!
And it really surprised me. It was a really well-written book. They've really reintroduced the story artistically from a unique perspective. The character only wears white, and when they draw him, it's as if he's in a black and white issue, but everything else is in color. And it's part of his personality because a lot of people kind of think he's crazy because he's been brought back to life by a moon god, and he basically fights bad guys at night. But it was really well written, and a lot of other people have given it high marks, and I'm definitely on board. As far as this next week, we've got a new Fantastic Four issue, which the series kicked off last week. It was also a very good issue. The trial of Jean Grey continues in the newest issue of All New X-Men. The Goblin Nation storyline continues in Superior Spider-Man, and New Wolverine.
Awesome. Joe, Ed, what's going on with DC?
Well, the couple of DCs that are coming up this next week, one thing is Justice League of America, which continues the Forever Evil storyline. JLA has been a lot of fun. They followed mainly Martian Manhunter and Stargirl with them trying to free the rest of the Justice League who are trapped inside the Firestorm Matrix, and Firestorm is rather unstable at this time. It could blow up with all the Justice Leaguers inside, or most of the Justice Leaguers inside. So that should be a pretty good issue. Batgirl 29 continues. They're introducing a new character last issue called Silver, who is sort of a vampire hunter, and he's under the delusion that every Bat figure in Gotham City is a vampire, and he's determined to end their lives, and he may have the ability to do it. So those will be pretty cool. Let me give you some from the indie scene as well. We got a lot of good stuff coming up. Over at Dynamite, they're reviving a lot of the old Gold Key heroes. So Magnus, Robot Fighter, starts again. We've got an advanced look at it. I'll be putting up an advanced review pretty soon. Awesome book. Fred Van Lente is proving that he can do a whole lot more than books that have a great amount of wit to them. He does Archer and Armstrong, Action Presidents, a lot of other stuff that's really funny stuff. This is a serious book, and it is completely amazing. If you ever love the old Gold Key characters, this is a must-read. IDW's got City of the Mind and the Machine, their second issue coming out, which is really good. Dark Horse has Beasts of Burden coming out, which is follows a crew of dogs that can communicate with each other. We've actually seen an earlier version of this story that was published independently on our site before, and Ghost #2 by Kelly Sue DeConnick comes out. At Image, Egos #3, which is Earth Galactic Operations involving a lot of cloned superheroes. It comes out, and I've loved the first two issues. Valiant has the crossover between Bloodshot and Archer and Armstrong continuing in Bloodshot and Hardcore #20, with Christos Gage and Joshua Dysart getting those guys. And then Unity #5. If you are a Ninjak fan from the old Acclaim and Valiant books, this is going to be very Ninjak-centric, and it's a really good book by Matt Kent. It reintroduces the classic villain Dr. Silk. Over at Boone, Ed Brisson has got a couple of books out, Sons of Anarchy and RoboCop Last Stand. And then our buddies at Action Lab, which was really the first indie books that we reviewed, M Theory, Volume 1 trade paperback comes out this week, which is just amazing. And there's going to be this Volume 2 starting out, I want to say in April or May, and we'll be talking to Brockton McKinney, the writer on that series, before long for an interview on Volume 2 as it comes out. And Zombie Tramp Volume 2, number 3, comes out this week from Action Lab as well. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of great books coming out this week.
Awesome. Lots to look forward to. Lots to read. Thank you guys for joining me tonight. Again, my name's Stephen McGauley, Editor-in-Chief of TM Stash, and with Geronimo and Ed Garrett. So thanks so much for joining me this evening, and we will see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.